He pulled over for the woman everyone ignored, then discovered she owned half of Chicago. Rain didn't fall on Chicago's south side that night. It attacked. Marcus Hale's van hydroplaned across 63rd Street, tires screaming on black water. Clock read 9:47 p.m. He'd been crawling through attics and crawlspaces since dawn. Furnace igniter, leaking ductwork, walk-in freezer meltdown at a taqueria that lost $2,000 in meat. His back screamed. His hands were cracked and black with grease. He just wanted his bed. And Jamal, his son, would be curled on Gloria's couch right now, King the lion's worn mane pressed against his cheek, breathing slow and trusting. Marcus pictured it and felt the last thread of energy snap taut. Then he saw her, huddled under the ripped awning of a dead laundromat, hood up, knees to chest, soaked to bone. Cars streaked past, headlights slicing rain like knives. Nobody slowed, nobody cared. Marcus kept driving. 20 yards, 30. His foot slammed the brake. Van lurched, ABS pulsed. He sat frozen, knuckles white, rain machine gunning the roof. "What the hell are you doing, Marcus?" he growled to the empty cab. Jamal was waiting. Gloria had already texted, "Boy's asleep, you late." But the image wouldn't leave. A woman, alone, freezing, invisible. He threw the shifter into reverse. Tires hissed. He backed up fast, angled the van to shield her from the worst of the wind, killed the engine, and stepped out. Cold hit like a fist. Water poured inside his collar instantly. Boots soaked through in 3 steps. He crouched low, close enough to smell wet concrete and faint desperation. "Hey, you okay?" No answer. Her lips were blue, eyes half shut. Marcus touched her wrist, pulse faint, thready like a dying signal. He didn't hesitate. One arm under her knees, the other behind her shoulders. She folded against him like wet paper, almost no weight. He carried her to the van, laid her across the back seat on an old moving blanket that smelled like motor oil and dust. Cranked the heat to max. Hot air blasted out, stirring her hood. She stirred, eyes cracked open, hazel clouded. "Where am I?" Voice barely a rasp. "Safe, for now." Marcus kept his tone flat, calm. No drama, no questions yet. "Just breathe." He drove. Not to Strager Hospital, too far, too many forms. Not to the shelter on Cottage Grove, closed, always closed when you needed it most. His house was 4 minutes away. Small, warm, his. He pulled up outside Gloria's first. Ran inside. His mother opened the door before he knocked. One look at his drenched frame and she sighed. "Lord Marcus, you bring trouble home like stray cats." Jamal asleep, snoring with that lion like it's his job. She studied his face. "What now?" he told her, quick. Woman in the rain, half frozen, no options. Gloria listened, arms folded, silver braids catching porch light. She didn't preach, she just nodded. "Bring her in." "I'll keep Jamal tonight if she's trouble. He wakes up in his own bed," Marcus said. "Always." He carried Jamal out, 8 years old, limp and warm. King clutched tight, buckled him in the front seat. The woman hadn't moved in the back. Home was a narrow 2-story on a block of matching brick row houses, chain-link fence, peeling green trim, but inside smelled like lemon cleaner and tomorrow's peanut butter toast. Marcus carried Jamal upstairs first, laid him down, tucked the blanket, kissed his temple. "Sleep tight, little man." Then the woman. He lifted her again, still light, still cold, carried her inside, set her on the couch. The living room was modest. Sagging sofa, Jamal's drawings taped to the fridge, Marcus's toolbox by the door like a sentry. He grabbed the softest blanket they owned, blue, fleece, the one Jamal dragged everywhere when scared. She woke as he draped it over her, eyes sharper now. Fear flickered, then something guarded. "You didn't have to do this." Her voice cracked like thin ice. "Didn't have to," Marcus agreed. He met her gaze, steady, no pity. "But I did." Bathrooms down the hall, towels clean, waters in the fridge. She watched him, tall black man, shoulders heavy from work, face tired but kind. No judgment in his eyes, just quiet certainty. "I'm Lena," she whispered. "Marcus," he nodded once. "Rest, we'll talk tomorrow if you want." He clicked off the lamp. Streetlight bled through the blinds in thin gold bars. Marcus stood in the doorway, listening to her breathing slow and deepen. Why stop? Because 4 years ago, a judge almost took Jamal away. Because his ex walked out and never looked back. Because every day Marcus fought to prove the world hadn't won yet. He wouldn't drive past someone drowning when he had a dry couch and a working furnace. Marcus closed his bedroom door, sat on the edge of the mattress. Rain tapped the window like it had something to confess. He rubbed grease from his palms. Tomorrow he'd rise at 5 a.m. Eggs, toast, orange juice to the Sharpie line on Jamal's cup. Routine, armor. But tonight the house felt heavier, like the storm had carried something inside that wouldn't leave with the dawn. Marcus had no idea the woman now sleeping under his son's favorite blanket wasn't homeless at all. She was Alina Voss, CEO of Voss Capital, one of Chicago's richest women, and she had known his name long before that rainy night. 5:03 a.m. and Marcus was already cracking eggs like the world owed him nothing. The kitchen light buzzed overhead. Rain from last night still dripped from the gutters outside, steady and cold. He moved on autopilot: 4 eggs, soft scramble, 2 slices of wheat toast slathered with peanut butter cut into perfect triangles. Orange juice poured exactly to the faded Sharpie line on Jamal's red cup. The boy had drawn that line himself at age 5. Marcus never let it fade. He wiped his hands on a dish towel, grease from yesterday still caught under his nails. The house smelled like warm bread and safety. For a second he almost forgot the stranger on his couch. Then a small voice cut through the quiet. "Dad, who's that lady?" Marcus turned fast. Jamal stood in the doorway in dinosaur pajamas, King the lion dangling from one hand by its frayed mane. The boy's eyes were wide, curious, zero fear. 8 years old and still believed the world was mostly good. "That's Lena," Marcus said, keeping his voice low. "She needed a dry place last night. Remember what I told you?" "We help when we can." Jamal nodded slowly, studying the lump under the blue blanket. Lena stirred. Her eyes opened, hazel, guarded but softer than yesterday. She sat up slow, blanket pooling around her waist. The gaunt lines in her face caught the kitchen light. "Morning," she said, voice still rough. Jamal didn't blink. He walked straight over, barefoot on the cold linoleum, and held out King. "You look sad," he said simply. "Dad says when someone's sad, you let them borrow King. He keeps you warm inside." Lena stared at the worn, stuffed lion, matted fur, one eye slightly crooked, stuffing peeking from a seam. Her hand trembled as she took it. Something cracked behind her eyes. "If an 8-year-old offered you his whole world in a stuffed lion, what would you do? Tell me in the comments right now, type King if that hits you, and smash that like button for Jamal and Marcus. We read every single one on Millionaire CEO Stories. Lena clutched King to her chest. Her fingers sank into the soft fur. For the first time in years, the weight on her ribs felt lighter. She hadn't planned this, hadn't planned any of it. Marcus watched from the stove. He didn't smile, didn't push, just plated the eggs and slid one in front of her. "Eat," he said. "No strings." Jamal climbed onto the stool beside her. "King likes peanut butter too. But only a little or his fur gets sticky." Lena took a bite. The eggs were warm, fluffy, perfect. She hadn't tasted real food in days, not the kind made by hands that didn't expect payment. She watched Marcus move. No rush. No show. He packed Jamal's backpack, double-checked the homework folder, wiped a smear of peanut butter from the boy's cheek with his thumb. A father who fixed things for strangers every day but never cut corners at home. Marcus glanced at the clock. 6:20. Bus at 6:45, little man, shoes on. Jamal hopped down, then paused. "Can Lena stay till I get home?" Marcus met Lena's eyes over the boy's head. "If she wants," she nodded once. After Jamal left, backpack bouncing, King now safely back in his arms, Marcus turned to her. "I got a double shift today, back around 7. Fridge is full, towels are clean. You don't owe me conversation or nothing else." He grabbed his work jacket, still damp from last night. The smell of rain and motor oil clung to it. At the door he stopped. "Mrs. Ruiz next door might peek, don't mind her. She thinks every new face is trouble." Lena stood, blanket still around her shoulders. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus looked at her, really looked. Tired brown eyes, strong jaw, hands that had carried more than furnaces. "Because I got a son who watches everything I do," he said, "and I don't want him learning the world only stops for people who look like they can pay." He stepped out. The screen door slapped shut behind him. Lena sank back onto the couch. King sat beside her like a silent witness. She pulled her coat closer and felt the hard edge of the hidden phone sewn into the lining. She hadn't checked it since yesterday. Her fingers itched. But she left it there for now. The day stretched. Lena moved slow through the small house, touched the crayon drawings on the fridge, stick figure families, bright suns, one labeled me and Dad and King, smelled the faint lemon cleaner on the counters. Sat at the kitchen table and watched the L train rumble past the end of the block, steel wheels screaming against rails. She had spent her entire adult life in glass towers where people calculated every smile. Here, everything was given free. At 11 a.m., she walked to the corner store, Mrs. Ruiz watching from her porch like a hawk, bought nothing. Just needed air. The cold Lake Michigan wind cut through her thin coat. She thought about Marcus's hands pouring juice to an exact line. Back inside, she found a note on the table. "Leftovers in blue container. Microwave 2 minutes." Simple, no signature flourish. No expectation. By 3 p.m., she was folding the blanket when the front door opened early. Marcus stepped in, face tight. "Client tried to slip me an extra grand to fudge the inspection," he said without greeting. Told him no, walked out. Lena looked up. "That's a lot of money." Marcus shrugged, kicking off his boots. Grease streaked his forearms. "Money ain't worth." Jamal looking at me different. He washed his hands at the sink, water running hot. Steam rose, the soap smelled like cheap pine. Lena felt it then, the slow pull. Not pity, not strategy, something warmer, dangerous. She pushed it down. At 6:40, Jamal burst through the door, cheeks red from the wind. "Lena, did King keep you warm?" She smiled, first real one in months. He did. Best night's sleep I've had in years. Jamal beamed. He climbed onto the couch beside her and launched into a story about dinosaurs at school, hands waving, King bouncing on his lap. Marcus stood in the doorway watching, arms crossed, something soft in his eyes he hadn't felt in 4 years. Dinner was spaghetti, Marcus's specialty. Simple red sauce from a jar, but he added garlic powder and a pinch of sugar like his mother taught him. They ate at the small table. Jamal talked nonstop. Lena listened, really listened, asking questions that made the boy sit taller. After Jamal was in bed, stories read, King tucked under his arm. Marcus and Lena sat on the couch with 2 mugs of black coffee. Rain started again, soft against the windows. You don't talk much about yourself, Marcus said. Lena stared into her cup. Not much worth saying. He didn't push, just nodded. But inside her chest, the lie grew heavier. The phone in her coat buzzed once, silent mode, but she felt it like a heartbeat. Derek Lang's name on the screen. Urgent. She ignored it. For the first time in her 34 years, Elena Voss wanted to stay exactly where she was. On a worn couch in a small house, with a man who fixed things without asking for thanks. Marcus had no idea Lena was already fighting the strongest pull of her life. But tomorrow morning, while he was crawling through another freezing attic, she would make the call that started the countdown to the moment everything would explode. Day 3 hit like a freight train. Marcus woke at 4:58 a.m., same as always, but the house already smelled different. Coffee brewing downstairs, faint vanilla from the cheap candle Lena must have lit. He sat up, rubbed the sleep from his eyes, and listened. Soft footsteps, a quiet hum. Someone was moving in his kitchen like she belonged there. He pulled on yesterday's work shirt, still carrying the ghost of furnace grease, and headed down. Lena stood at the stove in his old gray hoodie, sleeves rolled up, hair twisted into a messy knot. The pan hissed with scrambled eggs. Toast popped. Orange juice already poured to Jamal's exact Sharpie line. She turned. Hazel eyes met his. No fear this morning, just something raw and unguarded. I hope this is okay, she said, voice still raspy from the cold she'd carried inside her bones. You've done enough. Figured I could do this. Marcus leaned against the doorframe. The kitchen felt warmer than the thermostat read. Lake Michigan wind rattled the windows, carrying the distant rumble of the first L train of the day. It's more than okay, he said. Short, honest, Jamal thundered down the stairs in socks, King the Lion flying behind him like a cape. Lena, you made breakfast. The boy skidded to a stop, eyes huge. Dad, she used the good pan. Marcus almost smiled. Almost, he watched Jamal climb onto the stool and immediately hand King to Lena. King says you get him today because you look happier, Jamal announced, but only till bedtime. He gets scared without me. Lena took the lion like it was made of glass. Her fingers sank into the matted fur. For a split second, her shoulders dropped. The billionaire armor no one knew she wore cracked another inch. If an 8-year-old handed you his whole world in a stuffed toy, what would you do? Would you take it? Would you cry? Drop King in the comments right now if this moment just punched you in the chest, and smash that like button for Jamal and Marcus. We read every single one on Millionaire CEO Stories. Breakfast tasted better than it had any right to. Eggs fluffy, toast crunchy, juice cold and sweet. Jamal chattered about school dinosaurs and how Miss Patel said his drawing of King was museum quality. Lena listened like every word mattered. Marcus watched her watch his son. Something in his chest shifted, careful, dangerous. He'd promised himself after Denise left, no more openings, no more trust that could be yanked away. Yet here he was letting a stranger pour his son's juice. At 6:40 he walked Jamal to the bus stop. Cold wind off the lake cut through his jacket. Mrs. Ruiz peeked from her porch, arms crossed, eyes narrow. New house guest still here, Marcus, she called. Folks talk, you know. Marcus kept walking. Folks always do. When he got back, Lena was washing dishes, suds up to her elbows. The hoodie sleeves were wet now. You don't have to, he started. I want to, she cut in, soft but firm. Let me earn the couch. He grabbed a towel and dried beside her. Their elbows brushed once. Neither pulled away. The sink water was hot. The soap smelled like lemon. Outside, a siren wailed toward the Dan Ryan. Marcus cleared his throat. Got a job today on 71st. Old lady's furnace died. She's on fixed income. I'll probably eat the parts cost. Lena paused, sponge dripping. That's hundreds of dollars. Her husband died last winter, he said, shrugging. She shouldn't freeze because I need new tires. Lena looked at him then, really looked. The kind of look that sees past the grease-stained hands and tired shoulders. Marcus felt it land somewhere behind his ribs. By noon, she had the living room straightened. Crayon drawings neatly taped higher on the fridge. A small pot of chili simmering on the stove, beans and ground turkey from the fridge, spices she found in the cabinet. The house smelled like home in a way it hadn't since Denise left. Marcus came home early, coveralls streaked black. He sniffed the air. You cooked, figured you'd be hungry. Lena wiped her hands on the hoodie. Jamal gets home at 3, right? He nodded. Something warm uncurled in his gut. He pushed it down. When Jamal burst through the door at 3:07, King flew straight into Lena's arms again. Tell me the story about the lion who saved the kingdom, Jamal demanded, climbing onto the couch beside her. Lena sat cross-legged. Her voice changed, softer, playful, doing silly voices for each character. Jamal laughed so hard he got hiccups. Marcus stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. He hadn't heard his son laugh like that in months. Later, after Jamal was tucked in, King back in his arms, story complete, Marcus and Lena sat on the porch steps. 2 mugs of black coffee steamed between them. The night air bit cold, streetlights buzzed. Somewhere down the block, kids laughed under a basketball hoop. You're good with him, Marcus said quietly. Lena stared into her mug. He makes it easy. Silence stretched, comfortable. Then she spoke again. You ever think about what you'd do if someone took him away? Marcus's jaw tightened. Memories of courtrooms flashed, lawyers, paperwork, the terror of almost losing Jamal. Every single day, he said. That's why I don't cut corners, why I turned down that $2,000 side deal last week. My son watches. I won't give him a reason to be ashamed. Lena's eyes glistened. She blinked it away fast. Inside her chest, guilt twisted like a knife. She had watched this man from afar for years, the anonymous donor who wired money to his custody lawyer when the system tried to break him. She had never stepped forward, never told him. And now she was sitting on his porch wearing his hoodie, holding his son's lion, falling for the one man who saw her when she had nothing. Marcus glanced at her. Their shoulders touched. Neither moved. For the first time in 4 years, he didn't feel the empty space beside him quite so sharp. But Lena felt the hidden phone in her coat lining burn against her ribs. Messages from Derek Lang stacking up, the board growing restless. Voss Capital teetering. She stayed silent. For one more night. Marcus thought the warmth growing in his house was real. But tomorrow Lena would finally check her phone, and the secret she'd buried for 4 years would start ripping their fragile world apart. The lie had a heartbeat now. It lived inside the lining of Lena's coat, vibrating against her ribs every few hours like a second pulse she couldn't silence. Marcus noticed the way her hand sometimes drifted to that spot, quick, guilty, then pulled away. He didn't ask, not yet, but he felt the shift. The house was warmer with her in it, yet something cold had slipped inside too. Day 8. Late October had turned mean. Wind off Lake Michigan carried ice crystals that stung the cheeks. Marcus came home at dusk, coveralls stiff with frost, face raw. He kicked off his boots in the hall and stopped dead. Laughter floated from the living room. Jamal's high giggle mixed with Lena's low, surprised chuckle. He stepped around the corner. They were on the floor. Jamal had dragged out every blanket in the house. A fort sprawled across the rug like a soft castle. King sat on the throne, an upside-down laundry basket, mane fluffed for the occasion. Lena wore one of Marcus's old flannel shirts over her jeans, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She was mid-story, doing a ridiculous deep voice for the Lion King. And King said, "No kingdom is worth ruling if the people are cold." Jamal clapped. "That's you, Lena. You're the queen who came in from the rain." Lena's smile faltered for half a second. Marcus saw it. She recovered fast, ruffled Jamal's curls. Marcus cleared his throat. Both heads snapped up. "Dad. We built Lion Castle." Jamal scrambled out, dragging Lena by the hand. "She said we could keep it up till bedtime." Marcus looked at her over his son's head. Her eyes were bright, cheeks flushed from laughing. Something in his chest squeezed hard. "Look sturdy," he said quietly. "Good work, team." Dinner was leftovers reheated. Chili thickened overnight, cornbread crumbled on top. They ate at the small table. Jamal talked about school. Miss Patel had praised his latest drawing, King standing on a skyscraper, cape made of raindrops. Lena listened like it was the most important briefing of her. Lena's breath caught. "It's work stuff, old life." He studied her profile. "You don't owe me your past, Lena, but you don't have to carry it alone either." She looked at him then, really looked. The man who had carried her out of the rain without asking her name. The man who said no to easy money because his son was watching. The man whose quiet decency was starting to feel like the only real thing she'd ever touched. For one heartbeat, she almost told him everything. Instead, she leaned in, just enough that their foreheads almost touched. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not asking questions I'm not ready to answer." Marcus didn't move, didn't speak. Just let the moment hang. Then her phone buzzed again, louder this time, insistent. She pulled back like she'd been burned. Marcus stood. "I'm gonna check on Jamal." He went inside, left her on the porch with the cold and the secret. Lena pulled the phone from the lining. Screen lit her face blue. 17 missed calls, 32 texts. Derek Lang's name dominated the list. "Where are you? Board meeting tomorrow." Hale is pushing the no-confidence vote. Investors are spooked. Stock dipped 4% today. "Alina, this isn't a game anymore." She stared at the messages until the screen timed out. Darkness swallowed her reflection. Inside, Marcus stood in Jamal's doorway. The The boy slept curled around King, small chest rising and falling. Marcus felt the weight of every choice he'd made since that rainy night. He trusted too slowly now. Learned it the hard way when Denise walked out and left him fighting courts just to keep his son. But Lena, she was different. Or maybe he wanted her to be. He closed the door softly. Back downstairs he found Lena in the kitchen, phone hidden again, hands wrapped around a fresh mug like it could anchor her. "You okay?" he asked. She forced a small smile. "Just cold." He stepped closer. Close enough to smell the faint vanilla from her hair mixed with his laundry detergent. "Chicago winters don't play," he said, "but you're not out in it anymore." Her eyes met his. Something raw passed between them, unspoken, electric. Marcus reached past her for his own mug. Their arms brushed. This time neither pretended it was accidental. For the first time in years, Marcus felt the crack in his armor widen, and Lena felt the lie inside her coat grow claws. Tomorrow morning Marcus would leave for work thinking everything was finally starting to feel right. But while he was up in someone's attic fixing a busted heat exchanger, Lena would make the call she'd been dreading, and the first thread of her real identity would begin to unravel right under his roof. Sunday morning exploded in Marcus's chest before the sun even cleared the rooftops. 6:12 a.m. he padded downstairs in socks, expecting the smell of coffee and the soft shuffle of Lena moving in his kitchen like she had the last 11 mornings. Instead, the house was ice cold, the blue blanket folded military neat on the couch, no shoes by the door, no coat on the hook, just a single sheet of paper on the kitchen counter. Jamal's latest crayon drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun, now had writing on the back in neat, shaking letters. "Thank you for everything. I had to go. Lena." Marcus stared at the words until they blurred. His hand crushed the edge of the paper. The Sharpie sun smeared under his thumb. He stood there in the quiet kitchen that still smelled like her vanilla candle and his cheap pine soap. The L train screamed past 2 blocks away. Lake Michigan wind rattled the windows like it wanted in. She left, without goodbye, without explanation. After Jamal gave her king every single night. After she laughed at Marcus's bad jokes on the porch. After she looked at him like he was the first real thing she'd ever touched. He crumpled the note, then smoothed it out again. His chest felt hollowed out with a rusty spoon. Upstairs, small feet hit the floor. Jamal appeared at the top of the stairs, dinosaur pajamas twisted, king dangling from one fist. "Dad, where's Lena? She promised to finish the Lion Kingdom story before school." Marcus forced his voice steady. "She had to leave, buddy." Jamal's face folded. "Did I do something wrong?" "No." Marcus dropped to one knee, pulling his son close. The boy smelled like sleep and peanut butter from last night's snack. "You were perfect." "She just had somewhere to be." Jamal buried his face in Marcus's shoulder. King's mane tickled Marcus's neck. "She still has my extra blanket in her coat. She said it kept her warm inside." Marcus held his son tighter. "What would you do if the one person who made your son laugh like that vanished with nothing but a 5-word note? Type left in the comments right now if this one hurts, and smash that like button for Marcus and Jamal. We read every single one on Millionaire CEO Stories. The rest of the morning was automatic. Eggs, toast triangles, juice to the line, bus stop in the biting wind. Mrs. Ruiz watched from her porch, lips pursed like she'd known all along. When Marcus got back, the house felt wrong. Too quiet, too empty. He sat on the couch where she'd slept and stared at the folded blanket until his eyes burned. At 10:47 a.m., a knock rattled the door. A courier in a crisp uniform held a thick cream envelope with raised gold lettering. "Marcus Hale," Marcus signed, confused. The envelope felt expensive, heavy. Inside, one card. "You are cordially invited to Voss Tower for a private discussion on community development initiatives. Today, 2:00 p.m. executive floor. Diana Wells, Chief of Staff to the CEO. Voss Tower." Downtown, the glass spear that stabbed the Chicago skyline like it owned the sky. Marcus almost laughed, almost threw it away. But something, anger, curiosity, the need to move, pushed him into his only dress shirt, the navy one he wore to funerals and court dates. He drove north on the Dan Ryan, city changing from brick row houses to steel and glass. His work van looked ridiculous among the Audis. Security at Voss Tower scanned the invitation twice before waving him through marble halls that smelled like money and cold air. Executive elevator, top floor. The doors opened onto a cathedral of glass and light. A massive LED wall glowed behind the reception desk. Elena Voss CEO, Voss Capital, and there she was. Lena stepped out of a glass conference room in a black tailored blazer, hair pulled into a sleek knot, posture straight as a blade, flanked by assistants, commanding the room without raising her voice. Nothing like the gaunt woman he'd carried through freezing rain, everything like a woman who could buy his entire block before breakfast. She turned, their eyes locked across 30 feet of polished marble, her face drained of color, mouth opened. No sound came out. Marcus stood frozen in his church shirt and scuffed boots, grease still under his nails from yesterday's job. The man who had fed her soup at Rosie's. The man who had let her sleep on his couch. The man who had started to believe she was real. She had lied from the first second, testing kindness, playing poor, watching him like some science experiment while his son handed her king every night. The betrayal landed like a boot to the ribs. Elena took one step forward. Marcus, he turned, walked back into the elevator, pressed lobby hard enough to crack the button. The doors closed on her face. He didn't scream, didn't curse. Just stood there as the elevator dropped, jaw locked, eyes fixed on the floor numbers counting down. Outside, Chicago wind slapped his face. He climbed into his van, hands shaking on the wheel. She wasn't Lena, she was Elena Voss. Billionaire CEO, owner of half the city's future. And she had slept in his house for 11 days like it was nothing. Marcus drove south, the glittering towers shrinking in the rearview. The note in his pocket felt heavier than the whole damn skyline. He had trusted her. Jamal had trusted her. And now the only thing left was the empty couch and the question burning in his chest like acid. How long had she been laughing at them? By the time Marcus pulled into his driveway, the first news alert hit his phone. Billionaire CEO Elena Voss secretly lived as a homeless woman for 2 weeks. Sources say a South Side single father took her in. The storm was just beginning, and Jamal would be the first one caught in it. The phone started screaming at 7:03 am. Marcus was already awake, staring at the ceiling, the crumpled note from Lena still balled in his fist. First call, unknown number. Second, local news tip line. Third, Gloria voice tight, turn on channel 5 baby, right now. He did. The screen filled with Elena Voss's polished headshot beside grainy security cam footage of Marcus carrying her into his van that rainy night. Headline in blood-red letters, Billionaire CEO's secret homeless experiment. Southside HVAC dad played for a fool, the anchor's voice dripped fake concern. Sources say Elena Voss spent nearly 2 weeks living undercover on Chicago's South Side. One local resident, Marcus Hale, took her in, unknowing she controlled a 9-figure empire. Marcus's stomach dropped through the floor. His phone wouldn't stop. Texts, DMs, reporters. Even a producer from a morning show offering exclusive airtime to tell your side. He threw the phone across the room. It cracked against the wall but kept buzzing. Outside, Mrs. Ruiz stood on her porch with 3 neighbors, phones out, filming his front door like it was a crime scene. One shouted, "Hey Marcus, she pay you off yet?" He slammed the blinds shut. The house felt smaller, darker. The blue blanket on the couch now looked like evidence. At 7:45 he drove to Jamal's school, jaw locked so tight it hurt. The wind off the lake howled through the van vents, carrying the smell of diesel and betrayal. He found Jamal in the office, small shoulders hunched, eyes red. Miss Patel stood beside him, gentle but worried. Tommy and 2 others cornered him at recess, called him the billionaire's charity case, said his dad was dumb enough to fall for a rich lady's game. Jamal looked up. "They said you knew she was rich the whole time, Dad. That we tricked her for money." His voice cracked. "I told them you didn't, but they laughed." Marcus knelt, pulled his son close. King the lion was clutched so tight one seam had split again. The boy's tears soaked Marcus's shirt. "What would you do if your 8-year-old came home with bruises on his heart because the woman you saved turned out to be playing dress-up in your living room?" Type "broke" in the comments right now if this one cuts deep, and smash that like button for Marcus and Jamal. We read every single one on Millionaire CEO Stories. Marcus drove Jamal home. No questions, no lectures, just quiet rage building behind his eyes like a furnace about to blow. By noon, the story had gone nuclear. Twitter, now X, trended number Southside Sucker and number Billionaire Beggar. Tabloids posted drone shots of his little brick house. One headline, "Repairman hits the jackpot or got played, work calls dried up, 3 clients canceled." His boss left a voicemail, "Take the week, Hale, media's bad for business." Gloria came over with groceries, face set like stone. "Church prayer chains already praying for you." Mrs. Ruiz is telling everybody you knew all along. Marcus stood at the kitchen sink, knuckles white on the counter. "I carried her out of the rain, Mama. Gave her my son's blanket. Let her read him stories. And she was testing us." The words tasted like rust. That night Jamal wouldn't eat, wouldn't let go of King. He kept asking, "Was Lena pretending to like me too?" Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, voice low. "No, buddy. I don't think she was pretending with you." But even as he said it, doubt gnawed. How much had been real? Across town, in the 50th floor glass tower that overlooked the frozen lake, Elena Voss stood at her floor-to-ceiling window. Chicago glittered below like scattered diamonds she no longer wanted. Her private line buzzed, Derek Lang's voice calm and surgical. "Board's restless, Elena. Stock down another 6%. I've told them it was a controlled social impact study. But the footage of you on that man's couch is everywhere." She closed her eyes. The memory of Jamal handing her King hit harder than any stock drop. the warmth of Marcus's quiet, "You don't owe me anything," the way his hand had almost touched hers on the porch steps. She had wanted proof that kindness still existed without price tags. Instead, she had broken the only two people who gave it freely. "I'm coming in tomorrow," she said, voice flat. Derek paused. "Good. Fix this before we lose the merger." But Alina wasn't thinking about the merger. She was thinking about an 8-year-old boy crying because the queen in his lion story turned out to be the villain. Marcus didn't sleep. He sat on the couch where she had slept, staring at the blank TV. Every headline replayed behind his eyes, every neighbor's stare, every tear on Jamal's face. The rage wasn't loud. It was quiet, heavy. The kind that settles in your bones and refuses to leave. He had trusted too slowly for 4 years after Denise. Now he wondered if he would ever trust again. The next morning, a black town car pulled up outside Marcus's house. Alina Voss stepped out in a coat that cost more than his van, and this time she wasn't leaving without facing the man whose life she had set on fire. Day 4 hit like a sledgehammer to the ribs. Marcus woke to the sound of shattering glass. A brick crashed through the front window at 6:17 a.m., landing on the couch where Alina had slept, wrapped in newspaper, scribbled in black marker, "Gold Digger Enabler." He stood in the cold living room, glass crunching under his boots, Lake Michigan wind pouring in like punishment. The blue blanket was now dusted with shards. Jamal's crayon sun on the fridge fluttered in the draft. Outside, 3 news vans idled at the curb. Mrs. Ruiz stood on her porch with a sign, "Protect our kids from liars." Neighbors filmed on their phones. One yelled, "How much she pay you, Hale?" "Enough to fix that window." Marcus didn't answer. He boarded the window with plywood from the garage, nails driven so hard the hammer left dents in the wood. His hands shook, not from cold, from rage so quiet it felt like concrete setting in his chest. Jamal wouldn't leave his room. "School's canceled for me," the boy whispered when Marcus knocked. King the lion was clutched so tight the seam had split again. "They said I'm famous for being stupid. That you fell for a billionaire trick." Marcus sat on the edge of the bed. The room smelled like peanut butter toast in fear. "You're not stupid, little man. You're the bravest kid I know." Jamal's eyes filled. "But Tommy threw my backpack in the toilet yesterday. Said rich ladies don't really like poor kids. They just study us." Marcus pulled his son close. The boy's small frame trembled against his chest. "What would you do if your 8-year-old started hiding King under the bed because the world called him a joke? Type HERTBROKE in the comments right now if this one destroys you, and smash that like button for Marcus and Jamal." We read every single one on Millionaire CEO Stories. By noon, the calls stopped being offers. They became threats. A client left voicemail, canceling the contract. "Don't want my name near that mess." Gloria arrived with soup and steel in her spine. Rosie at the diner said reporters tried to bribe her for pictures of you two together. She told them to kick rocks. Marcus stood at the kitchen sink, staring at the boarded window, grease still under his nails from the last job he'd actually finished. "I carried her out of the rain, Mama. Let her hold my son's lion." And she was running some experiment. The words tasted like ash. His flaw stared back at him in the cracked mirror above the sink, trusting too slowly now, because Denise had taught him what happened when you opened the door all the way. But this felt worse, because Jamal had opened his heart wide and Alina had walked straight through it. Across the city, in the marble silence of Voss Tower, Alina Voss stood at her private elevator, coat on, security waiting. Derek Lang blocked the door. "Alina, the board meets in 20, stocks down 11%. I've spun it as market research, but the footage of you laughing on that man's couch is everywhere. Fix it or step aside." His voice was calm, clinical, the voice of a man who'd lost his own family to emotions and now protected empires instead. Not evil, just certain kindness was a liability. Alina looked at him. For the first time, she saw the fear behind his ruthlessness. "I'm going to the south side. I need to face him." Derek's jaw tightened. "That's suicide." She stepped past him anyway. The town car smelled like leather and regret. Back on the south side, Marcus answered the door to a reporter shoving a mic in his face. "Mr. Hale, did you know she was Alina Voss the whole time? Was this a setup for money?" Marcus stared the man down, voice low and steady. "I stopped because she was freezing. That's it. Now get off my porch." He closed the door. The click sounded final. Jamal refused dinner, refused stories, just held King and stared at the wall. She promised she'd come back for the Lion Kingdom ending. Marcus sat beside him until the boy fell asleep, then moved to the couch. The plywood over the window blocked the streetlight. The house felt like a cage. His rage wasn't loud. It was a slow burn in his gut, the kind that made him replay every moment. Her laugh at Jamal's jokes, her fingers brushing his on the porch, the way she looked at him like he was the richest man in Chicago. All while she had a tower waiting. He picked up his phone, one new message from an unknown number. "Marcus, please, let me explain, I'm outside." He opened the blinds a crack. A black town car sat at the curb. Elena Voss stepped out under the streetlight, elegant coat, perfect hair, but her eyes were hollow. She looked up at the house, at the boarded window, at the man staring back at her through the glass. Marcus didn't move, didn't open the door. The betrayal pain had hardened into something colder, something that said, "Not this time." Marcus finally opened the door, but only to tell her to leave. What he didn't know was that inside her briefcase was a hidden phone already recording, and tomorrow she would walk into the Voss Capital boardroom, ready to burn her entire empire down on camera for him and Jamal. The knock came at 5:47 a.m. like a gunshot. Marcus stood in the dark hallway, plywood still covering the broken window, Jamal asleep upstairs clutching King like a shield. The black town car idled at the curb under the streetlight. Elena Voss stepped out, black coat, no makeup, hair loose in the Lake Michigan wind. She looked small against the flashing cameras already swarming the block. Marcus opened the door 2 inches. Cold air sliced in. "You got 30 seconds, he said, voice low and flat. "Then you leave and never come back." Elena's eyes were raw. "Marcus, please." "I never meant what?" He stepped onto the porch. Cameras zoomed. Phones rose. "Meant to lie for 2 weeks on my couch. Meant to let my son hand you his lion every night while you took notes for your little experiment." His words carried across the street. Mrs. Ruiz filmed from her porch. Reporters shoved closer. Elena flinched but didn't back down. "It started as a test. I needed to know if anyone still helped without expecting something back. But then it became real. You, Jamal. The way you fixed that old lady's furnace for free. The way you poured juice to the exact line. I fell." "Stop." Marcus's hand cut the air. "You don't get to say that word." "Not after Jamal came home crying because kids called him a joke. Not after bricks through my window. Not after the whole city thinks I was chasing money." He leaned in, voice ice. "You wanted proof of kindness. Congratulations. You got it, now feel what happens when you spit on it." Elena stood frozen. Tears slipped down her cheeks. The wind whipped them away. For one heartbeat, the cameras caught everything. The hurt black father in grease-stained boots, the billionaire in designer wool, the space between them colder than the Chicago winter. What would you do if the woman who broke your son's heart showed up on your porch with the world watching? Type confront right now if Marcus's rage just hit you, and smash that like button for this single dad who never asked for any of this. We read every single one on Millionaire CEO Stories. She reached into her briefcase, pulled out a small black device and pressed it into his hand. "This is live, hidden mic. I'm walking into the boardroom in 1 hour. Everything I say will be recorded. I'm risking it all, for you, for Jamal." Marcus stared at the device. "Why now?" "Because I finally understand what real wealth is," she whispered. "And it's standing on this porch." She turned and walked back to the car. Cameras exploded around her. Marcus closed the door. The click echoed like a final nail. 1 hour later, he sat at the kitchen table, phone propped up, Gloria beside him, Jamal still asleep upstairs. The live stream from Voss Capital's emergency board meeting filled the screen. Marble conference room. Glass walls overlooking the frozen lake. 12 directors in suits. Derek Lang at the head of the table, silver hair gleaming, face calm but eyes sharp. Elena stood at the podium. No notes, voice steady at first. "I didn't disappear for a social experiment. I disappeared because I was drowning in a world that measures everything by returns. So I took off the armor. I sat in the rain, and one man stopped." The room went dead silent. She looked straight into the camera, straight at Marcus. "His name is Marcus Hale, HVAC tech, single father. He carried me when I couldn't walk, fed me eggs he made for his 8-year-old son, let me sleep on his couch under a blanket that smelled like safety. His son Jamal gave me a stuffed lion named King and told me it keeps you warm inside when the world is cold." Derek Lang leaned forward. "Elena, this is not the time." She cut him off, voice rising. "This is exactly the time. While I was in that house, I watched Marcus turn down $2,000 because the client wanted a lie on the inspection. I watched him read bedtime stories after 12-hour shifts. I watched a little boy offer his most precious thing to a stranger with nothing expected back." Her voice cracked. "I came looking for proof that kindness still exists without price tags. I found it. Then I destroyed it." She turned to the board. "I am stepping down as CEO effective immediately. All personal shares, 42%, will be redirected into a new Voss Community Fund, affordable housing on the South Side. After-school programs, job training for single parents, run by Marcus Hale if he'll take it. No strings, no board oversight." Gasps rippled. Derek shot to his feet. "You'll tank the company, maybe," Elena said. "But some things are worth tanking for." She looked back at the camera one last time. "Marcus, Jamal, I'm sorry. King kept me warm, you kept me human." The hidden phone in Marcus's hand captured every word. The stream hit 2 million viewers in 4 minutes. Comments flooded. "I'm crying in my car. This is what real power looks like. Kindness wins." Marcus sat motionless. The rage was still there, heavy as concrete. But something else cracked through it, tiny, dangerous, like the first light after a long night. Gloria touched his arm. She just burned her whole world down on live TV. For you too. Upstairs, Jamal stirred. King's worn mane peeked over the blanket. Marcus stared at the frozen image of Alina on the screen, eyes wet, shoulders straight, empire in flames behind her. The public confrontation was over. The real one was just beginning. Marcus drove downtown the next morning with one question burning in his chest. Alina was waiting in a quiet coffee shop on Elm Street. No cameras, no board, just the truth about the custody lawyer who saved Jamal 4 years ago, and the guilt she had carried in silence ever since. Marcus parked the van outside the Elm Street coffee shop at 2:03 p.m., engine still running, hands locked on the wheel. Snow mixed with sleet slapped the windshield. Early December wind howled off the lake, rattling the chain-link fences 2 miles south in his neighborhood. The viral clip of Alina's boardroom speech had 47 million views overnight. Number KINDNESSWANS trended worldwide. But in his south, Marcus killed the engine. His jaw ached from clenching it for 3 straight days. Inside, the shop smelled of burnt espresso and wet wool. Alina sat in the back corner booth, plain gray sweater, no makeup, hair down, no entourage. No security, just a single black coffee going cold in front of her. She looked up when he slid into the seat across from her. Marcus didn't speak, he just stared. The same eyes that once carried her out of the rain now looked at her like she was a stranger again. "You wanted to talk," he said, voice low, flat. "Talk." Alina's fingers tightened around the mug. "The board voted yesterday. I'm out as CEO. Derek Lang is interim. Stock stabilized after the announcement of the community fund, but the damage is done." Marcus leaned back. "Good, you wanted real life. Now you're living it without the tower." She winced. The hurt in her eyes was real. If the billionaire who lied in your house suddenly burned her empire to say sorry on live TV, would you even sit down with her? Type "coffee" in the comments right now if you're torn like Marcus, and smash that like button for this single dad who's still protecting his son. We read every single one on Millionaire CEO Stories. Silence stretched. The barista wiped the counter. Outside, a siren wailed toward the Dan Ryan. Alina reached into her bag and slid a single folded paper across the table. Marcus didn't touch it. 4 years ago, she said quietly, your ex-wife filed to terminate your parental rights. You were one hearing away from losing Jamal. The lawyer you hired was good, but the bill was $28,000 you didn't have. You were sleeping in your van some nights to save money. Marcus's breath caught. I saw the story on a local news site. Single black father fighting the system. I wired the money anonymously through a legal aid fund. Told them it was from a private donor who wanted no credit. I never told you because, her voice cracked, because I didn't want you to think I was buying your gratitude. Or because I was scared that if you knew, you'd look at me the way you're looking at me right now. Marcus unfolded the paper, a bank transfer receipt, date stamped 3 weeks before the judge ruled in his favor. The exact amount that had saved his son. His hands started to shake. You paid for the lawyer that kept Jamal with me. Yes, the words landed like a second brick through his window. All those nights he'd lain awake terrified of losing his boy. All those court dates where he'd worn the same navy shirt and prayed. And the woman who had sat on his couch eating peanut butter toast had been the reason he still had his son. Marcus pushed the paper back. So the whole time you were in my house, you knew this. I carried it every single day. Alina's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I watched you make Jamal's eggs exactly right. I watched you turn down easy money. I watched your son offer me king like I was worth loving. And every night I wanted to tell you, but the lie had already grown too big. Marcus rubbed his face. Grease from yesterday's job still under his nails. The smell of the shop mixed with the memory of her vanilla candle in his kitchen. I trusted too slow after Denise left, he said. Now I don't know if I can trust at all. You gave me my son back and then took something else away. His smile, his belief that people stay. Alina nodded slowly. A single tear slipped down her cheek and hit the table. I know, and I'll live with that forever. The community fund is real. No board, no control from me. You run it if you want or walk away. I just needed you to know the whole truth before you decided. Marcus stared at the receipt again. The paper felt heavier than the entire Voss Tower. Outside, the sleet turned to soft snow. Inside, the coffee machine hissed. For the first time since the tower reveal, the concrete in his chest cracked just enough to let in air, not forgiveness. Not yet, but something like possibility. He stood. I need time. Alina nodded. Take all of it. Marcus walked out into the snow. The wind stung his face. His van waited like an old friend. In the rearview mirror, he saw Alina still sitting in the booth, head bowed, shoulders shaking once. The woman who had saved his son years ago had finally told the truth. Now he had to decide what kind of man he wanted Jamal to see when he looked at his father. 5 months later, on a warm Saturday in early May, the new Voss Hale Community Center opened its doors 3 blocks from Rosie's diner. Marcus stood at the ribbon with Jamal and King the lion in his arms, but the person cutting the ribbon was the last one anyone expected to see standing beside them. May 3rd hit the south side like forgiveness in sunlight. Warm air rolled off Lake Michigan, carrying the smell of fresh-cut grass and hot dogs from the corner stand. The old boarded-up storefront 3 blocks from Rosie's diner had been transformed. Fresh white paint gleamed. Bright blue lettering spelled out Hale VOSS Community Center above double doors that actually opened without sticking. Kids already laughed inside, feet pounding new tile floors. The L train rumbled past, but today its scream sounded like celebration. Marcus stood on the sidewalk in a clean button-down, sleeves rolled, grease finally scrubbed from under his nails. Jamal bounced beside him in dinosaur sneakers, King the lion tucked under one arm like always. Gloria adjusted the collar of Marcus's shirt, church volunteer pride shining in her eyes. Rosie from the diner handed out coffee in paper cups. Miss Patel herded a line of excited 8-year-olds through the doors, and Alina Voss stood quietly to Marcus's left. No designer coat today. Just jeans, a simple white blouse, and the same quiet nerves she once hid under a soaked hoodie. Her hand brushed his for a second. Neither pulled away. Marcus looked at the building he had helped gut and rebuild every weekend since January. He had wired the HVAC himself, framed the after-school room, painted the walls until his shoulders burned. Alina had shown up with paint cans and sore hands, learning how to swing a hammer beside him. No press, no cameras. Just 2 people trying to turn guilt and pain into something that could hold weight. The small crowd clapped as the ribbon fell. No speeches. Marcus had refused. Alina had agreed. Words had already done enough damage. Jamal tugged Marcus's hand. "Can I go first, Dad?" Marcus nodded. "Go on, little man." The boy walked straight to the reception desk inside the bright lobby. Fresh flowers sat in a mason jar. Sunlight poured through new windows. Jamal climbed onto the stool, reached high, and placed King the lion right in the center of the desk. The worn mane caught the light. One crooked eye stared out like it had been waiting for this exact spot. Jamal pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and taped it to the wall behind the lion. "When you're sad, borrow King. He keeps you warm inside." The words were written in careful 8-year-old letters. Red crayon, a little wobbly. Perfect. Marcus felt the concrete that had lived in his chest since October finally crack wide open. He remembered the rainy night, the weight of a stranger in his arms, the way Jamal had offered King without hesitation. The headlines that tried to break them, the coffee shop where Alina laid the custody receipt on the table and waited for him to walk away. He hadn't walked away. 5 months of slow, careful conversations. 5 months of Jamal asking every Saturday if Alina, could read the Lion Kingdom story again. 5 months of Marcus learning that trust wasn't something you gave all at once. It was something you rebuilt brick by brick, the same way they rebuilt this center. Alina stepped beside him. Her shoulder touched his, the scent of vanilla mixed with fresh paint. "I used to think Power was the tallest building in Chicago," she whispered, voice only for him. "Now I know it's this. A stuffed lion on a desk and a little boy who still believes people can be good." Marcus looked down at her. The woman who once wore billion-dollar armor now stood in scuffed sneakers with paint on her cuff. The woman who had secretly paid for the lawyer that kept Jamal safe. The woman who had risked everything on live television so a South Side dad and his son would know they mattered. He didn't say anything dramatic. He simply took her hand, their fingers laced together, warm, steady, real. Gloria wiped her eyes. Rosie raised her coffee cup in a silent toast. Miss Patel led the first group of kids to the art table where crayons already waited. Outside, the May sun climbed higher. The chain-link fences down the block still needed paint, but inside these walls, something stronger had been built. Marcus watched Jamal run to join the other kids. King sat on the desk like a quiet king on his throne, guarding the promise written behind him. This was real wealth, not the glass tower downtown, not the stock price, not the headlines. It was an 8-year-old boy who still believed in second chances. It was a father who learned that forgiveness wasn't weakness, it was the hardest strength there is. It was a woman who gave up everything to prove kindness was never wasted. The center doors stayed open all day. Families walked in. Kids laughed. Someone turned on music. The smell of fresh popcorn drifted from the back room Rosie had stocked. Marcus and Alina stood at the big front window, hands still linked, watching the south side come alive in the spring light. Jamal ran back over out of breath, grinning. "Dad, Alina, King says the kingdom is open now, for everybody." Marcus smiled, the real one that reached his eyes. He pulled both of them close. And in that quiet moment, with the sun warming the new floors and King watching over it all, the 3 of them stood exactly where they belonged, together, because sometimes the richest person in any room isn't the one with the most money. It's the one brave enough to love without conditions, and the one strong enough to forgive when the world says they shouldn't. If this story moved you, drop a red in the comments. Tell me what you would have done in Marcus's shoes. Subscribe to Millionaire CEO Stories for more, and share this with one person who needs to believe in kindness again.